Before we even get started, I want to make very clear that this is a spoiler-free video. Rest assured, you can breathe easy. There is nothing here that will dilute or destroy your experience of Uncharted 4. What's going on, guys and girls? It's Ghost Robo, and boy, oh boy, Uncharted 4 has arrived. I'm not allowed to post my gameplay series until Monday, but you will want to come back for that because I've got a crazy, epic, monstrous part 1 and a whole bunch of videos, and the game is just freaking mind-blowing. But we are allowed to give you an early impression / review video discussing the game. And like I promised, no spoilers, no worries there. I'll just talk more in generality about the game and about the characters, the themes, the combat, the improvements, the environments, the level design, and the overall experience of Uncharted 4. Frankly, it is freaking incredible. And to give you a little backstory, I'm a massive Last of Us fan. I loved Uncharted 2 to death. That was a punishingly good year for games, and one that was incredibly difficult to decipher what your game of the year would be. You had stuff like Assassin's Creed 2 and Batman Arkham Asylum and Uncharted 2. I even liked Uncharted 3 quite a bit, much more than most reviewers did. I found that game to be very fun, and while it didn't have the same sense of wow and charm that Uncharted 2 did, it recreated many of those moments with new situations, new characters, and sort of just had, for me, a lot of the same effect, even though it was, a lot of rinse and repeat. It was different enough, and I was fine to play that game twice. Now, Uncharted 4, there is a big gap between 3 and 4. It's the first entry for the series on this generation of console, and really the first game for Naughty Dog because Last of Us Remastered doesn't really count. The Last of Us, though, absolutely fantastic, and this game had a few bumps and bruises along the way of development, losing Amy Hennig and replacing her with a lot of the team that made The Last of Us, and you got Neil Druckmann and Bruce Staley on the leads. And what would happen in this game? There were delays. It was pushed out of 2015 into 2016 and then pushed back into May. But let me tell you, it's fantastic. Now, I'm mainly speaking about the single-player component of the game. I played multiplayer in the beta, which I did really like, but I know that campaign is where you guys are curious. So let me just talk about it. Freeform for a while here. First off, it has possibly the best video game Easter egg of the decade. And I'm not going to give you anything else on it, but when you see it, you will know what it is, and it is fantastic. Everyone that plays it will see it. Everyone that plays it will love it. It's that freaking good, and I don't even want to... It's very cool how the game is set up. A lot of people in reviews I read complained about sort of the slow and plodding first few chapters, but I've really enjoyed that investment into story and character. It makes you feel for Nathan and his brother and gives you a really good sense of where they come from, what their relationship is like, and why this quest is of the utmost importance to both of them. I really like the more, mundane way that they go about building the momentum of Uncharted 4. It starts with a bang and then goes soft, and then builds and builds and builds until you feel like you're back in a Nathan Drake adventure. But there is a period of time for the first few hours where it hits a lot of different tones, and I thought that was really a nice change of pace, and you can see where a lot of Last of Us influences really kind of enter the mix here. And obviously, the Uncharted games did a lot of things that The Last of Us did in terms of pairing you with other characters for part of the adventure, in terms of having great motion capture, very lifelike characters with great dialogue and a very well-written story. But I think you can see how The Last of Us has equally influenced this. I felt very comfy in the early hours of Uncharted 4, as I did in The Last of Us, with just some really sweet scenes and sweet setups of, I guess, real life. And I don't want to spoil much more than that, but the diversity of locations here is absolutely fantastic. And if I had to pinpoint my absolute favorite part of the game thus far, I would say it's the environments in both their scope, their scale, and their variety. Because I can count like 11 different locations that I've played in the first 6 hours, and they're all vastly different. Now, I have not completed the game, but I'm at a point that I'd say I can't see it falling off and being terrible from here on out. I will make a final review at the end of my series for you guys to watch like I usually do, but I have a very good grasp on the game. I think I'm about halfway through. I played through 10 of the 22 chapters, and I've seen a really good mix of what the game has to offer. I wanted to make sure that I played through the entire intro, which is quite elongated, and then I played through sort of the first main act of the game. If you recall past Uncharted, you know that they sort of follow this structure where you follow a thread to a location and then reach it, and then that leads you to another location. But within that act, Uncharted touches on far more places and spaces than any of the past 3 games. And that is not because they don't, spend enough time in one place and it feels jumpy and fleeting. It's because it feels insanely polished and diverse. Each environment is just built out beautifully, and while you cannot explore to your heart's content, there feels like there's a lot more flexibility here than ever before. Multiple paths to climb, multiple paths to combat, multiple paths to descend and explore and experiment with how you're going to navigate your way through these environments. So instead of just one path funneling you forward, there feels like there are 2 or 3 possible paths that still, yes, will all funnel you to the same point. It is a linear story after all. But I love the fact that they have blown out these environments to a size where I feel like I've never seen anything quite like this. First of all, we get hardly any games that have the focus and quality of Uncharted. The writing, the characters, the linearity, the level design, just the polish and the charm here is through the roof. And in an era of open world and mobile and, rehashes and making sure they cater to everyone, we just don't get that kind of artistry in games. And I'm not talking about just the graphics, which are incredibly stand out. I think, again, of everything, the visual just pizzazz and prowess of this game is mind-blowing. And I don't even want to give away the locations, but based on trailers and based on what you're watching now, that you will be exploring jungles, and you will be exploring lush mountains, you will be exploring plains, you'll be exploring mansions and ruins and cathedrals and catacombs, and it just runs the gamut of every kind of environment you could expect in this game. And it doesn't like save the snow level for the penultimate chase. It gives you that very early on. It doesn't save the really oddball sort of environment for the final battle. It gives it to you very early on, and that tells me that, man, this thing can only go up from here, because they're throwing so much at you so quickly and so often that they are confident in their design. Unless this pulls a Kills on Shadowfall and just drops the back third of the game, I can't even imagine where they're going to go next. I think it has a more mature tone than the past 3 Uncharteds, and it still has those funny moments. It still has that humorous connection from character to player, which is much appreciated, especially the banter between the brothers. That is just fantastic, and it really connects with me as someone who has 2 younger brothers. I feel for Sam, the older brother, and I can also understand where Drake's coming from, Nathan, as the younger of the 2 Drizzies. But they really, it seems, as Nathan is aged, Sam is even older than him. Sully is, beyond those 2, and then Elena, it has a different feel. Like, this is a different Nathan Drake. He's not the young, buccaneer that he once was. He's a little bit more beat up and a little bit more cautious and has a little bit more on his mind, and that takes shape through the plot in the first 10 chapters, and I appreciate it. There are themes here that are pretty dark, and not so dark that it's going to feel like some, strange Game of Thrones episode, but it does give off an older adult vibe, whereas I felt the first 3 were much more summer blockbuster popcorn plots. Well-written ones, of course. This movie seems to have a bit more drama in it and a bit more of another dimension that the other stories didn't quite put into place. So from a storytelling standpoint, this is my favorite thus far, and I think the characters that I've seen are very believable and very they make a mark. And the characters, I'd say there's been 6 major characters so far, and all of them are great, and some minor ones as well. There's incidental dialogue, like you found in Last of Us, where Joel could walk up to Ellie and hit the triangle button and get a little bit more, back and forth between the 2, and that happens in this game as well, and you want to make sure you take advantage of that. I found some of the off-the-beaten-path exploration to be rewarding as well, just for the journal entries and the treasures. Not necessary, obviously, but being in this world, you will want to sneak and poke around every corner. I like the increased focus on stealth in the gameplay. As we transition to discussing that, I really feel like they have made an effort to add a little bit of Metal Gear Solid here, which is a very good thing. It makes your time as Nathan Drake feel more valuable and increases the quality. Because one of my complaints about the Uncharted franchise in the past was that the combat was its weakest part, and the gameplay that involved fighting, and that was very simplistic and sort of greatly overshadowed by the exploration, the climbing, and, the characters. Here, though, they've added a lot of tall grass, a lot of ability to stealth through areas, entire areas, which may have been possible in previous Uncharted, but wasn't given as a true alternative as it is here in Uncharted 4. You can really sneak around, and it's encouraged and beneficial. They throw some big, bad encounters at you very early. The first 3 hours don't have much combat. In fact, Drake does not get his gun till very, very late in the opening chapters, and there is an incredibly late title card, and his gun doesn't even come till well beyond that. So you will be climbing quite a bit early on, but once combat comes, they really throw it right at you, and so that's where stealth really comes into play and becomes something that you're going to want to add to your arsenal, and you're going to need to learn to do. Sure, you can brute force your way through the encounters, but you will feel much more like a true treasure hunter if you learn how to stealth. Right, the AI seems great. Enemies flank very well. They approach from both sides. There have been some very dastardly encounters where I was pushed to the limits. And the partner AI for Sam, or whoever character is following you, is good as well. And there haven't been any awkward, clumsy moments. It feels like it is better than in The Last of Us, as it should be, where sometimes Ellie would get too close or be in a position that made no sense. So far, Sam seems to have a far bigger tether to him. If we're leashed together, per se, he's got a huge range of where he can go. Back to the combat a little bit. I feel like the gunplay is the best it's ever been. You still have the bullet sponginess of the enemies, but nothing too crazy as of yet. I haven't faced off against any hulking, hyper-armored foes that require 20 shots. Headshots are, for the most part, one-hit kills, and it takes probably, 4 or 5 shots to take down an enemy if you're going body. Now, that obviously depends on the gun you're using. We have shotguns and AKs and pistols and, snipers and whatnot. But in general, this feels like the most dynamic combat, primarily because you have so many more options within the environment to attack. Not only do you have that stealth that I discussed, but you have rope swing points that are useful mostly in climbing and clambering, but also in combat. There are some scenarios where you can rope around and kind of attack the enemy from multiple angles just as they try to do to you. And you will need to be flexible because there's a lot of destructible cover. Like I said, enemies flank from many directions. And so it is very mobile and multifaceted combat. And I've enjoyed the ability to kind of approach the encounters not from a funnel, but more from an arena. And that has really opened up the possibility for fun for me. So I didn't feel like I was just sitting there and, stop and popping everywhere. But I really had to make clever use of the environment as well as my tactics. You can, one great example is I was descending down a mountain because you do have this rope that can be used to cross chasms. It can be used to ascend, rappel, and I was rappelling down the face of a cliff, and there were some guards beneath me, and I could shoot them from that rope, or I could drop down and try to stealth take them out. And I shot them from the mountain because I thought that looked cool, and it sure wasn't cool afterwards because it attracted the attention of guards from far off. There's a new system for enemies where they have almost, again, a Metal Gear Solid or a stealth game alert meter above their head. It goes from white to yellow to orange. White, they are curious. Yellow, they've seen something and will come investigate. And orange, it's where they alert their friends and all hell breaks loose. And that is fun to play around with as well. And it's okay if you get spotted as long as you make sure you get out the way and stay safe. And that is pretty intense early on as well. You got to be careful. They expect a lot of the player, which was surprising and also really nice and rewarding. And again, just to touch on the environments, those play a huge role in your exploration. There's just some great ones. The scale and again, scope of both indoor and outdoor areas is masterful. I've never seen a game blow out levels like this. And the vistas, the views, if you like Shambhala in Uncharted 2, if you like the snowy train in Uncharted 2, if you were a fan of the plane escape in Uncharted 3 and the very, desperate desert you're going to love this game because they throw just insane set piece after set piece after skybox after skybox after vista after location after location at you. There are some driving segments. Those are pretty cool. It's much more exploration based than I expected, which is very nice. And you really feel like you have a lot more... I don't know, like you feel like you are adventuring more than I think you did in the past. And there's just some small mechanical inclusions here that really rang true with me. One time you have to attach, more than one time, you have to attach a rope to basically like a hook onto a rope. And rather than just go up and press triangle and see Drake do his thing, you actually have to like wrap it around yourself. And it reminded me of the Battle of Hoth and Luke with the Snowspear. But it was a great way to add sort of that realism to a game that has been criticized in the past for being quite unrealistic. It still has Drake murdering hundreds of foes, but I feel like in every other area, they have made this the most hands-on Uncharted yet. And maybe that's a small thing that most people won't notice, but again, there are big things. And the combat, the size and scope of the environments, and the darker tone to me are what really stand out most. And that combat, it's not so much the guns, or a new sense of gore. It really is just that the environments are larger and they encourage more of a playground, approach as you wish way of fighting versus just a funneled, straightforward path. There are less forced scenes than I remember. I don't know if some will come, but by that I mean, where you're like being chased by the truck or you're running on this very set path. Things have felt very organic. Even some crumbling moments have had their own sense of just naturalness to it, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of sliding. I've been shocked by how much sliding there is. That's one thing I've been surprised by, and sort of maybe a neutral/negative is there's a lot of sliding. And I guess that's kind of a fun mechanic. But I am impressed with the climbing and how it's not as rote as I feel it was before. Tomb Raider really kicked butt in the reboot at making the climbing feel more like real climbing and less like following the colored line. And Uncharted 4 still has the colored line feel, but it's just as good or almost as good, or maybe even better in some instances than the newest two Tomb Raider games at that flexibility of ascending and descending your environments. And there's a lot of clever play of like, oh, you'll climb up this side of a building and then jump across, go down, so then you can climb up the opposite side of the same wall that you climbed earlier. Just some really clever, almost maze-like usage of the environment, and the level design just, I think, again, is incredible. And to think that people mapped out these pathways and it all works out is just really, really cool. In terms of negatives, I would say that in general it does feel very much like an Uncharted game, and if you don't have the past games in close memory or you're not really paying attention, you may feel like this is just a retread. But even if that's the case, I feel like it bowls you over with bravado and excitement and just spectacle every single step of the way. They are really confident with what they do. They put in some really clever moments, especially early on. I'm curious to see how the back 6 chapters will feel, but the first 6 were I felt engaging. I know, again, like I said, people have said that they're slow and not really what they were looking for, but I so appreciated that. It gave a different pace and tone than what you've come to expect, and it clearly showed that their storytelling in Last of Us was a step up, an upgrade from Uncharted, and now they've brought that back into the fold in Uncharted. Now, there's no crafting or intense increase of systems here, and maybe that would benefit the adventure, but it has just like a speed to it that is really nice. There's never really any slow moments. You do have puzzle solving that, as usual, is fun, and I felt not too hard, but enough of a thinker so that you wonder about it for a minute or two and then move on. But you're never at a standstill. You're never, in menus. You will read your journal if you so choose, and there's some funny side notes by Drake. But you can really just keep this adventure going. It's very easy for 15 minutes to turn into 45 to turn into 2 hours. The chapters flow beautifully, one after the other. There's a lot of cutscenes, but they keep my interest. That's something really remarkable, because I play a ton of games, and usually I'm on my phone during cutscenes. And here I'm like, no, I like what they're doing enough, and I want to hear what they say enough, and it's fast and fun and engaging and well-written and well-performed, well-delivered enough to really hold my attention. So I'm in love with the game thus far. I have not wanted to stop, and I've recorded a ton of videos because it is that darn good, and I cannot wait to see where they take us next. It still has the typical thread of like, oh, we have to find this, and then we have to find this, and then we have to find that, but there's more at stake this time, and without going into detail, I think it puts a greater oomph on the storyline. I'm curious to see how that all plays out, and if it really has sort of the fulfillment and emotional, cash in at the end that I'm expecting based on the whole setup here. I'm curious, how they'll handle sort of the villains in the storyline, who they'll make out to be the main villain, where that will go, what characters I'll meet down the road. They also do something that I love, and I'm saving it for the end of this video here because it's not a spoiler, but you do play in different eras. And I'll say it that way so that I don't give anything else away. But I love when they do that in games. They mess with the timeline a bit, is how I guess I can say it and convey what I'm trying to say. And you wouldn't know that this game went through any hardship or through any tough times or any transition because it feels incredibly cohesive. There's nothing that feels out of place. And visually, it's the best PS4 has. I'll be curious to see what Horizon Zero Dawn actually delivers when that game hits disc. But Uncharted 4 is absolutely glorious. It's glorious in its design. It's glorious in its graphics. It's glorious in its environments, its characters. There is not one weak component at all. And I was skeptical if they would be able to deliver an adventure that captivated because the first three, were great. And I didn't know if we were maybe done with that. But time will tell how this fares against the rest of the series. And The Last of Us and the other games of this year and this generation and of all time, I guess. But right now, I think it's sitting pretty good to compete with those aggressively. And as of right now, it is my favorite Uncharted. If it keeps up this way, I think it will be the best. Because it has, like I said, it feels like, if Uncharted 2 and 3 had levels that were like, ooh, a 7 out of 10, ooh, an 8 out of 10, ooh, a 6 out of 10, ooh, a 7, ooh, a 5. And then at the end, you were like, oh, we got the 9. This feels like 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. And there has not been a low moment yet. Because even when you're in a dark, dingy environment, you'll come out the other side and there will be a lush, beautiful ruin for you to climb. And it's like, how did they pack so much in? And how were they able to create so many assets and so many unique environments and keep this game fresh? It's a genre and a franchise that could have felt repetitive. And I will say this kills Tomb Raider on the environments. It really crushes Tomb Raider on the just pure joy of turning the page and seeing what's going to happen next from a visual and locale standpoint. It just crushes it. And I think Tomb Raider is a beautiful game. But by being a globe-trotting adventure, you're able to see so much more and take you from the depths to the heights, left, right, up, down, all around. I don't want to spoil any of the locations, like I promised. But it lacks sort of that, obviously, the Metroid-like progression of Tomb Raider, and that plays into their need for a more cohesive and continuous environment. But from a straight-up, like, wowzer frame of mind, this kills it. And I'm not yet ready to say, oh my god, this is going to be my game of the year, or oh my god, it's better than any game this generation, but it's trending in that direction, and I think it's doing everything right. And anyone that plays this game will be incredibly happy. I've played about 6 hours, and I'm a little less than halfway through, so you're getting a good adventure, and the multiplayer seems like it's going to be really fun as well. I love the heck out of Last of Us multiplayer, and I'm sure I'll put some good hours into this one as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything I didn't touch on. The characters, the environments, the combat. There are some sequences where you will make little conversation choice. They're so few and so spread apart that I didn't feel it was really worth mentioning. But they do add, again, an extra layer of you putting yourself in this game. Hand-to-hand combat is also increased in its focus. I don't know that it's improved much. The animations are definitely increased, but it still feels a little bit static. But the gunplay and the environments make up for it. So I don't want to get repetitive. I think that about covers it. Like I said, you'll get a lot more goodies and details in my series that starts on Monday with just bonkers first part. I'm stupid for making it this long, but I know you guys are going to love it, and I wanted to do it for you because I know people have been waiting for this game so long, so you deserve something incredible when I'm allowed to post, and I will right away. In the meantime, I hope this video gave you some goodies, didn't spoil anything, and filled your hype meter even higher. I was worried. I didn't want to prejudge the game and give it all of the glory before it earned it, but it's earned it. And so I'm super ecstatic to finish this one off and relish every second of it. And I hope you guys will do the same with me on the series next week. Until that time, though, everybody, thanks again for watching. It's really fun to love a game this much. It comes so rarely these days with everything feeling repetitive, rinse and repeat, open world, same old, trying to cater to the mass audience. But every once in a while you get a game, and it's a home run. And home runs are the most exciting thing in baseball. And these story-driven, beautiful adventures are the most exciting thing in gaming. So I'm glad that we get to take part in it together. I'm glad that it's finally here, and I cannot wait to go play more. So I'm going to go do that. You guys have a fantastic day. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Drink so much chocolate. Until next time, I love you all. We'll see you all later.